My camera lens caught nothing but shadows through the warehouse window. 3 weeks tracking phantom leads about missing people in Chicago's financial district, and this was what I had to show for it. Blurred outlines, and a source who kept changing meeting locations. I was ready to walk away from this entire investigation. The anonymous tip had led me here, to the South Loop Industrial Corridor where abandoned buildings lined streets like tombstones. My beat-up Honda looked painfully out of place between rusted loading docks. I checked my phone. No new messages from the source. Typical. I should have left. Gone back to my studio apartment, accepted that some stories died before they began. But 28 years of being Hannah Brooks, freelance investigative journalist with more ambition than common sense, meant I stayed. Meant I circled the building one more time. Meant I found the side door that opened when it absolutely shouldn't have. The interior smelled like decay and motor oil. Concrete floors stretched into darkness punctuated by shafts of afternoon light through broken skylights. I kept my phone in my hand, camera app ready, every instinct screaming this was stupid. Smart people didn't walk into abandoned warehouses alone. Smart people called the police. I wasn't feeling particularly smart. Voices drifted from somewhere deeper in the structure. Male. Low. Speaking a language that sounded like Italian, but I couldn't be certain. I moved toward them, each footstep impossibly loud in my own ears despite my deliberate care. My heart hammered against my ribs hard enough to hurt. The voices grew clearer as I approached what had once been an office area. Glass walls, mostly intact, showed silhouettes of at least 6 men. I raised my phone, zooming in as much as the lens allowed. That's when I saw him. He stood at the center, commanding the space without apparent effort. Tall, maybe 6'3", dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my car. Dark hair, darker eyes that I couldn't quite make out from this distance but felt the weight of anyway. The other men deferred to him in subtle ways. Body language spoke volumes when words remained foreign. I took the photo. The click, barely audible, might as well have been a gunshot. One of the men's heads snapped toward my position. I ducked behind a support pillar, pressing my back against cold concrete. Phone clutched to my chest like it could somehow protect me. Footsteps. Fast. Professional. I ran. The warehouse became a maze in my panic. I crashed through a doorway, stumbled over debris, my ankle protesting as it twisted slightly, but held. Behind me. Shouts in English now. They knew someone had been there. They were coming. I burst through what I thought was an exit, but instead found myself in a dead-end loading bay. The massive door was sealed. Locked. I spun around just as 3 men entered the space, blocking my only escape route. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. The message was clear in their positions, their hands resting near their waistbands where I absolutely did not want to imagine what they carried. Then he walked in. Up close, he was devastating. Not handsome in any conventional way, but striking in a manner that bypassed aesthetics entirely and went straight to primal recognition of danger. His eyes were dark brown, almost black in the loading bay's dim light. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow, barely noticeable but impossible to unsee once spotted. He looked at me the way scientists examine specimens. Curious, analytical, detached. "Who are you?" His voice carried an accent. Subtle. Italian, I thought. Smoothed by years of English but still present in the vowels. "Nobody." My voice shook. I hated that it shook. "I'm nobody. I was just looking around." "With a camera?" Not a question. I didn't answer. What could I possibly say? He moved closer, deliberate and unhurried. Predators didn't rush when prey was cornered. He held out his hand, palm up. The gesture was almost polite. The expectation behind it was absolute. I gave him my phone. He scrolled through my photos with casual efficiency. My stomach dropped with each swipe. The warehouse images. The telephoto shots I'd taken of corporate buildings while researching property ownership. Notes I'd typed to myself about shell companies and suspicious transfers. My entire investigation, laid bare. Journalist. He said it like an observation, not an accusation. Freelance. As if that distinction mattered now. "What are you investigating, Hannah Brooks?" He'd found my name somewhere in the phone, probably my email, my contacts. Places where my identity was scattered like breadcrumbs I'd never thought to hide. Missing persons. The truth seemed safer than a lie. People disappearing from the financial district. No pattern, no ransom demands. Just gone. Something flickered across his expression. Not quite surprise. More like recognition. "And you thought I was responsible?" he asked. "I don't know who you are. But you're about to." He pocketed my phone. "You've put yourself in a complicated position, Miss Brooks. I'll delete everything. I'll walk away. You'll never see me again." The words tumbled out desperate and raw. No. Simple. Final. "You won't." Fear crystallized into something sharp and cold in my chest. "Are you going to kill me? That would be wasteful." He turned to one of his men, spoke in rapid Italian. The man nodded and pulled out his own phone, typing something. "What are you doing?" I demanded, courage born from sheer terror. "Making arrangements." He looked back at me, and I saw something in those dark eyes that might have been regret, or might have been calculation. I couldn't tell. "You saw too much to simply leave, but you may have stumbled into something that puts you in more danger than you realize." "What does that mean?" "It means, Miss Brooks, that you're coming with me until I determine exactly how much of a problem you are, and for whom. That's kidnapping." "Yes." No apology in his tone. "It is." Two of his men moved toward me. I backed up until I hit the loading bay door. Nowhere left to go. They didn't grab me, didn't touch me, but their presence was a wall I couldn't cross. "My car will be dealt with. People will look for me. Will they?" He tilted his head slightly. "Freelance journalist. No regular employer. How long before anyone notices you're gone, Miss Brooks?" 3 days. A week? He was right. The knowledge of it burned worse than the fear. "Who are you?" I asked again, but differently this time. Not demanding. Pleading. "My name is Luca Moratoni." He said it like I should recognize it. I didn't. "And you are now under my protection, whether you want it or not." "Protection from what?" "From the people you are actually investigating." His expression hardened. "The ones who don't ask questions before they make problems disappear permanently. The ones whose operations your research was very close to exposing." He paused. "You should be more careful about which doors you walk through, Miss Brooks. Some of them don't open back out." A black SUV pulled up to the loading bay door, appearing so quickly it must have been waiting nearby. The door rolled up with mechanical efficiency. Luca gestured toward the vehicle. "After you." I didn't move. "I'm not asking," he said quietly. "But I am being far more civilized about this than you might expect. Don't make me reconsider that approach." I walked to the SUV. Got in. The door closed behind me with a sound like a vault ceiling. Luca slid into the seat beside me, maintaining a careful distance. Professional, clinical. As we drove away from the warehouse, I watched Chicago's familiar streets pass by the tinted windows, each block taking me further from my life and deeper into something I didn't understand. Luca made a phone call in Italian, his tone businesslike and calm. I sat in silence, my mind racing through implications and escapes, and the terrible realization that I'd walked into a trap I hadn't even known existed. And the man beside me, this Luca Moratoni, with his expensive suit and dangerous eyes, held all the cards. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "Somewhere safe." He ended his call, pocketed his phone. "Lake Forest, about 35 miles north. You'll be comfortable there while we determine what happens next." "And what does happen next?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his expression I couldn't name. "That depends entirely on you, Miss Brooks." The SUV continued north, away from everything I knew, toward something I couldn't begin to predict. And despite every logical thought screaming danger, despite knowing I should be terrified beyond reason, what I felt most acutely was a strange, electric awareness of the man sitting 18 inches away. 3 weeks of investigation had led me here, to this moment, to him. I had no idea it was only the beginning. Sunlight woke me, sharp and insistent through windows I didn't recognize. For a moment I lay still, disoriented, cataloging details that didn't match my studio apartment. High ceilings, crown molding, sheets with a thread count I'd never owned. Then memory crashed back. The warehouse, Luca Moritoni, the drive north. I sat up, taking inventory. The bedroom was twice the size of my entire apartment. Cream walls, hardwood floors, furniture that looked antique and probably was. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking nothing but trees, their leaves burning with October color. My clothes from yesterday were folded neatly on a chair. Someone had been in here while I slept. The bathroom was marble in excess. I washed my face with cold water, stared at my reflection, and tried to formulate a plan. Run. Except I had no phone, no car, no idea where I was beyond 35 miles north. And I'd seen at least 4 men patrolling last night. The closet held clothes that fit perfectly despite not being mine. Even undergarments in my exact size. That should have been comforting. It was deeply unsettling instead. I dressed and ventured into the hallway. The house unfolded like a museum. Art I suspected was worth more than I'd earn in a lifetime. Sculptures on pedestals. A staircase that curved down to black and white marble. I found him in a study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, packed with volumes that looked old and valuable. The 4th was windows overlooking manicured gardens. Luca sat behind a massive desk, laptop open, phone to his ear speaking Italian. He saw me but only gestured toward a leather chair. I didn't sit. Standing felt like the only power I had. He ended the call, set down the phone, and looked at me directly. Daylight made him sharper, more defined. The scar through his eyebrow caught the light. You slept well? As if this was a hotel and I was a guest. No. Understandable. He closed the laptop. We need to establish parameters for your stay. My stay. As if I'm visiting. You are here for approximately 3 weeks. He continued as though I hadn't spoken. During that time, you have freedom of movement within the property. The grounds are extensive. You will have access to internet, though monitored. A phone for essential contacts, also monitored. How generous. It is, actually. His voice dropped a degree. Given the alternatives. I crossed my arms. And what happens after 3 weeks? That depends. He stood, poured coffee from a carafe, offered me a cup. I didn't take it. He shrugged and drank it himself. The territorial situation I'm managing needs to resolve. Your investigation needs proper assessment for what you actually uncovered versus what you think you uncovered. I don't understand. Miss Brooks, you've been digging into disappearances connected to criminal activity. You're correct. But the criminals responsible are not my organization. He picked up a folder, handed it to me. You're supposed to be a journalist. Investigate. I took it because curiosity overrode caution. Inside were documents, financial records, shipping manifests, names I didn't recognize, photos of people I'd been tracking, the missing persons from my investigation. Where did you get these? I have resources. He watched me flip pages. Look at the dates, the locations. Notice anything? I did. The disappearances clustered around specific warehouses and ports, all connected to one name appearing repeatedly. 'Ndrangheta operations. Who are they? Italian organized crime. Calabrian, specifically. Expanding into Chicago territory for 2 years. Trafficking. Extortion. Things my organization doesn't touch. Your organization. I looked up. What exactly does it do? We protect our interests. Maintain certain business operations in gray areas. We follow codes. We don't prey on the vulnerable. He straightened. The 'Ndrangheta has no such restrictions. You're saying I was investigating them, not you. I'm saying you stumbled very close to exposing roots that would have gotten you killed. You're not the first journalist they've disappeared. You would have simply been the most recent. The folder felt heavy in my hands. You can't prove this. I can, given time, cooperation. He moved closer, near enough that I had to tilt my head back. You wanted a story. I'm offering one. But it requires patience. And staying alive long enough to write it. By keeping me prisoner. By keeping you safe. He corrected. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Then sit. He gestured again. This time I took it. Legs unsteady. He perched on the desk edge, Close enough I could smell his cologne. Cedar and spice. Expensive. Like everything about him. What do you want from me? Cooperation. Don't try to escape. It would be futile and dangerous. Don't contact anyone beyond essential calls. Don't interfere with my business. And in exchange? Safety. Comfort. When this is over, information you can use. He paused. Assuming you're still interested in truth. I looked at those photos again. Those missing people. Journalists who got too close. 3 weeks, I said finally. Approximately. And then I can leave. Then we'll reassess. Not quite a promise. Hannah. He used my first name for the first time. It sounded different in his accent. Softer. Almost gentle. I understand this isn't the situation you would have chosen, but it's the situation we're in. We can make it bearable or unbearable. The choice, to some degree, is yours. I met his eyes, dark brown, intense. I want to call my editor. She'll worry. After breakfast. He stood. Speaking of which, are you hungry? No. You should eat anyway. The kitchen belonged in a magazine. Someone had prepared eggs, toast, fresh fruit. I ate because refusing felt childish. We didn't speak. Luca checked his phone periodically, responded to messages, acted like involuntary house guests were completely normal. When I finished, he handed me a smartphone. Your editor's number is programmed. 5 minutes. I'll monitor. Keep it simple. I took it to the study and dialed Jessica. Hannah? Jesus, where are you? I'm fine. Following a lead out of town. Might be a few weeks. A few weeks? What lead? The missing person story. It's bigger than I thought. I'll explain when I can. Hannah, I have to go. I ended the call. Luca appeared in the doorway. Well done, he said, almost approving. Appropriately vague. I lied to my friend. You protected your friend. He took the phone back. The less she knows, the safer she is. I wanted to argue. Couldn't find words. The next 4 days established a routine I hated and adapted to with disturbing ease. I woke when sunlight dictated. Explored the property, finding gardens and a greenhouse and walking paths through woods that always ended at fences I couldn't climb. Avoided Luca when possible, which wasn't often in a house where he seemed to occupy every space eventually. We ate meals together. Sometimes in tense silence. Sometimes with conversation that danced around anything substantial. He asked about my journalism career. I asked nothing personal in return, though I wanted to. He worked constantly. Phone calls and video conferences and hours behind his laptop while I haunted the library, reading first editions I was afraid to damage. He brought my laptop on day 3. Monitored, but functional. I opened investigation files and cross-referenced with his documents. Slowly, a picture emerged. Then Drangheta. Their expansion. Their methods. He'd been telling the truth, at least about this. On the 5th day, during dinner, I asked a different question. Why do you do this? I gestured vaguely. Organized crime. You're clearly intelligent. You could be anything. He set down his fork, considering me. I am what my family made me. This life isn't chosen, Miss Brooks. It's inherited. Everyone has choices. Do they? He tilted his head. What would you have me do? Walk away? Abandon people who depend on me for livelihoods? Protection? I don't know. Neither do I. For the first time, I heard something almost vulnerable in his voice. Almost human beneath the polish. We do what we can with what we're given. The moment passed. He stood, cleared plates himself, rather than calling whoever typically handled such things, and I was left wondering if I'd imagined that flash of something real beneath his carefully maintained surface. 5 days down. 16 more to go. If he was telling the truth about the timeline. I returned to my room that night and stood on the balcony, breathing autumn air that smelled like wood smoke and changing seasons. A journalist investigating a crime. A woman trapped in luxury. A person beginning to see that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't as clear-cut as I'd always believed. And somewhere in this sprawling house, Luca Moratoni sat in his study, conducting business I didn't understand, existing in shades of gray I'd never been forced to acknowledge before now. 3 weeks suddenly felt like a very long time. A week after my capture, routine had calcified into something almost normal. I woke to birdsong rather than alarms. Spent mornings in the library with coffee that cost more per cup than my monthly utility bill. Afternoons walking grounds that were beautiful and confining in equal measure. Luca and I circled each other like planets in careful orbit, close enough to acknowledge presence, far enough to maintain safety, until the morning I found him in the library at dawn. I'd come down early, unable to sleep, thinking I'd be alone with leather-bound volumes and silence. Instead, he sat in one of the wing-backed chairs near the fireplace, a book open in his lap. He wore jeans and a dark sweater instead of his usual suits. The casualness made him look younger, less like a crime boss, more like a man who read Russian literature before sunrise. "Dostoevsky," I said, recognizing the spine from across the room. He looked up. "You know it? The Brothers Karamazov. Read it in college. Twice." I moved closer despite my instinct to retreat. "Didn't expect you to be a fan of existential crisis and moral philosophy." "Why not?" He marked his page, closed the book. "Because men like me aren't supposed to think about suffering and redemption." "I didn't say that. You thought it." No accusation in his tone, just observation. "Sit, since we're both awake and avoiding sleep." I should have left. Instead, I sat in the chair opposite his. The fire had burned down to embers. Outside, November darkness pressed against windows. "Can't sleep?" I asked. "Rarely can." He set the book aside. "Hazard of the profession. Always waiting for the call that changes everything. Sounds exhausting." "It is." He studied me with that analytical gaze I'd come to recognize. "What's your excuse? Comfortable bed, safe house, no immediate danger." "Maybe that's the problem," I said before I could stop myself. "Too comfortable. Too safe. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop." "Smart." He leaned back, firelight catching the scar through his eyebrow. "Never trust comfort. It makes you soft." We talked then, really talked, for the first time since I'd arrived. About books, about the philosophy of crime and punishment, about whether people were fundamentally good or fundamentally self-interested. He argued for self-interest with the conviction of someone who'd seen too much evidence. I argued for good, because I had to believe it was possible. An hour passed, like minutes. The conversation ended when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something shifted in his expression. Hardened. "I need to go." He stood, the casual man disappearing behind the professional mask. "There's an issue at one of the establishments downtown. Nothing that concerns you, but I'll be gone most of the day." "What kind of issue?" "The kind I handle." He paused at the doorway. "Stay inside today. Don't go near the perimeter." "Why?" "Because I'm asking. Not quite a command." "Close enough." He left before I could respond. I spent the morning restless and distracted. Tried to write. Couldn't focus. The conversation from dawn lingered like smoke. For an hour, Luca Moratoni had been someone I could almost like. Someone intelligent and thoughtful and complicated. Then his phone had buzzed and he'd become someone else entirely. By afternoon, I was pacing the house like a caged animal. I found myself at the windows overlooking the drive, watching for the SUV that had left 6 hours ago. Watching for him. When had I started watching for him? 4 o'clock came. Then 5. Then 6. The sun set and darkness swallowed the grounds. I ate dinner alone, something the cook had prepared and left in the kitchen. The silence felt heavier without him. 7 o'clock. 8. My anxiety shifted from annoyance to something closer to concern. What kind of issue took this long? What kind of business required 12 hours? The kind you don't want to think about. My brain supplied helpfully. At 9:30, headlights finally swept up the drive. I was in the study, pretending to read, when I heard the front door open. Heard voices in Italian. Heard footsteps coming down the hall. Luca appeared in the doorway and my breath caught. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt had a tear at the shoulder and what looked like blood on the collar. Not a lot. Enough. His knuckles were raw and split, but he was walking. Talking. Alive. "You're hurt," I said, standing before I realized I'd moved. "It's nothing. That's not nothing." I gestured at his shirt. What happened? Nothing that concerns you. The same words from this morning, but with an edge now. Exhaustion. Pain. Something else I couldn't identify. Sit down. I crossed to him. Let me at least look at it. Hannah. Sit down. I used my journalist voice. The one that got people to talk when they didn't want to. Unless you want to call a doctor, in which case I'm sure that would be very convenient for your evening. He almost smiled. Almost. Then he moved to the leather couch and sat, wincing slightly. I knelt in front of him, reaching for the buttons of his shirt before I thought better of it. May I? He nodded. I unbuttoned the shirt carefully. The blood on the collar had come from a cut near his collarbone. Not deep, but messy. The kind that bled a lot but wasn't dangerous. His shoulder had bruising already blooming purple and black. First aid kit? I asked. Bathroom down the hall. I found it, returned, and set about cleaning the cut. He didn't flinch when I pressed antiseptic to broken skin. Didn't make a sound. Just watched me with those dark eyes while I worked. What happened? I asked again. Quieter this time. Territorial dispute. Minor. Resolved now. This is minor? You should see the other man. Dry humor threaded through exhaustion. I'd rather not. I taped gauze over the cut, moved to his knuckles. They were worse. Split across 3 fingers on his right hand. I cleaned them gently, feeling the calluses on his palm, the warmth of his skin. You don't have to do this, he said. I know. Then why are you? I looked up, met his gaze. Because you're hurt. Because you came back. Because... I didn't finish the sentence. Wasn't sure how. His hand turned under mine, fingers threading through mine for just a moment before he pulled back. The touch lasted 3 seconds. Maybe less. It felt like longer. Thank you, he said quietly. You're welcome. I finished with his knuckles, packed up the first aid kit, and stood. The air between us felt charged, different. Like something had shifted during those minutes of careful touching and unspoken words. The establishment downtown, I said. Was it the Ndrangheta? Yes. What did they want? What they always want. Territory, profit, control. He leaned back against the couch, looking more tired than I'd seen him, more human. They sent a message. I sent one back. The language of violence is unfortunately very clear. Is it over? For now, these things are never truly over. He looked at me then, something unguarded in his expression. You were worried. I was annoyed you weren't here for dinner. The lie came easily. We both knew it was a lie. Hannah. My name again in that accent. Softer. You felt something when you saw me hurt. Don't pretend otherwise. I would feel something seeing anyone hurt. Would you? He stood, moving closer, not threatening, questioning. Would you have spent the evening watching the drive? Would your hands have shaken when you cleaned wounds that aren't yours to care about? I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. He lifted his injured hand, traced one finger along my jaw. The touch was feather light, electric. You're starting to see me as something other than your captor, and it terrifies you. You're wrong. Am I? His thumb brushed across my lower lip. Tell me I'm wrong, Hannah. Tell me you feel nothing. I should have. Should have pulled away. Should have reminded us both that this was impossible for 100 reasons. Instead, I leaned into his touch, just slightly, and watched something ignite in his eyes. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Terrible. He agreed. Neither of us moved away. The moment stretched, taut and trembling. I could feel my pulse in my throat, could see his chest rise and fall with carefully controlled breathing. We stood at the edge of something that would change everything. His phone rang. The spell broke. He stepped back, pulled out the phone, glanced at the screen. I need to take this. His voice had gone professional again. Cool. Controlled. Like the past 2 minutes hadn't happened. Of course. I retreated to the doorway. Get some rest. You look like you need it. Hannah. I stopped but didn't turn around. It's not wrong, he said quietly. What you're feeling. Neither is being afraid of it. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Just walked back to my room and stood in the dark, replaying the moment his finger had traced my jaw. The moment I'd leaned in instead of away. 7 days into 3 weeks, and I'd just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Outside, autumn wind rattled the windows. Somewhere in the house, Luca spoke in Italian to someone about business I didn't understand. And I stood in borrowed clothes in a borrowed room, touching my jaw where he'd touched it, wondering what the hell I was doing, wondering if I even wanted to stop. 2 days passed in careful avoidance. I stayed in my room longer than necessary, took meals at odd hours, found excuses to be anywhere Luca wasn't. If he noticed, he didn't comment. But I felt his gaze tracking me when our paths crossed. On the 3rd day, winter arrived. I woke to find the world beyond my windows transformed. Snow blanketed the grounds in white silence. I was in the library when the power flickered. Once, twice, then died completely. The silence was absolute. No hum of heating, no electronic buzz, just snow against windows and my breathing. Footsteps in the hallway. Then Luca appeared, phone in hand, flashlight casting shadows across his face. "Lines are down," he said. "Storm took out infrastructure. Could be hours before power returns. What about the generator? Should have kicked in." He frowned. "I'll check it. Stay here." He built a fire efficiently. Within minutes, flames crackled and warmth spread through the room. "Don't let it die," he said. "Temperature's already dropping. I know how to maintain a fire." "Do you?" The corner of his mouth quirked. "Journalist from Chicago." "When exactly did you learn wilderness survival?" "College boyfriend had a cabin." I crossed my arms. "You'd be surprised what I'm capable of." "No." He held my gaze. "I wouldn't." The air shifted. Charged. Like 3 nights ago when his thumb had traced my lip. His phone buzzed. "I need to check the generator. Lock the door behind me." He left before I could argue. I fed the fire, paced, tried to read by firelight. 30 minutes became an hour, then 2. Outside, snow fell heavier. When the door burst open, I jumped. But it was Luca, covered in snow, shaking. Blood ran down his arm from a gash near his shoulder. "What happened?" I crossed the room. "Generators sabotaged. Someone cut the fuel line." He grimaced. "Rigged a blade trap. Amateur work, but effective. You need stitches. I need to secure the perimeter first." He pulled out his phone, swore. "No signal. Sit down." I pushed him toward the couch. "You're bleeding everywhere and half frozen. The perimeter can wait. It's not that deep. Let me be the judge of that." I retrieved the first aid kit. He shed his snow-soaked jacket and shirt without prompting. The cut was 3 inches long, slicing through muscle. Deep enough to need stitches. "This is going to hurt," I warned. "It already hurts." I cleaned the wound gently. He didn't make a sound, but I felt his muscles tense. Felt the controlled breathing. "The Ndrangheta?" I asked while I worked. "Most likely. They knew this storm was coming. Perfect cover. For what? For making a point. For showing they can reach us here." His jaw tightened. "For reminding me that safety is an illusion." I started butterfly closing the wound. "Not ideal, but it would hold." "Your investigation," Luca said suddenly. "The missing persons. You were tracking patterns, yes?" "Yes. Why?" "When you looked at the files I gave you, the Ndrangheta operations. Did you notice something about the locations?" I thought back. The warehouses. The ports. They were near transportation hubs. Places where people could be moved quickly. What else? They were in areas where multiple jurisdictions overlap. Where responsibility gets blurred. Exactly. He watched me work. You were close to exposing a trafficking route that runs through 4 states. Closer than anyone else has gotten. That's why you're dangerous to them. You knew this when you took me." I suspected. "I've confirmed it since." He caught my hand. "Hannah, that research you did, those connections you made, that's why they would have killed you without hesitation." His hand was warm on mine. Strong. Steady despite the injury. "Then you did save my life," I said quietly. I complicated it beyond recognition. His thumb traced across my knuckles. "But yes, I suppose I did." I finished bandaging his arm in silence. The fire crackled. Snow whispered against windows. "Stay here tonight," Luca said, "until I can sweep the house properly. I'm not afraid." "You should be." He stood, moved to the windows. Fear keeps you careful, keeps you alive. Is that how you live? In constant fear? No, in constant awareness. There's a difference. I fed more wood to the fire. The library was warm now, insulated by thick walls, but I could feel cold seeping in from the rest of the house. What happens if they come tonight? I asked. Without power or security systems. Then I handle it. Simple. Certain. But they won't. The storm is message enough. They'll wait to see how we respond. We. Yes. He looked at me directly. You're part of this now, Hannah. Whether you wanted to be or not. I didn't want any of this. I know. Something soft entered his expression. But here we are. Despite everything, I almost smiled. You have a twisted sense of humor. It's how I stay sane. He sat carefully, favoring his injured arm. Tell me something. Why journalism? Why investigate things that get people killed? I sat opposite him. The fire cast dancing shadows. Because someone has to. Because the people who disappear deserve to be remembered. Because silence is complicity. Even when truth is dangerous? Especially then. He studied me for a long moment. You remind me of someone. My brother, Gabriel. He believed in absolutes too, right and wrong. Justice and injustice. Past tense. He died 5 years ago. Caught in crossfire meant for me. The pain in his voice was raw. He was 23, studying law. Going to be the legitimate Moritoni. I'm sorry. So am I. He leaned back. He would have liked you. Would have argued philosophy with you for hours. What was he like? And Luca talked. Really talked. About Gabriel. About growing up in a family where violence was currency. About the brother who'd wanted different and died for it. About carrying that weight every day since. I listened. Asked questions. Saw pieces of him I hadn't glimpsed before. The grief. The guilt. The walls that kept people out. Hours passed. The fire burned low. I added more wood. Snow continued falling. And in that library, cut off from the world, we stopped being captor and captive. We were just two people talking in the dark about loss and choices. I need to tell you something, I said finally, about my investigation. Tell me. I wasn't just tracking disappearances. I was tracking people trying to expose the Ndrangheta. Activists, other journalists, a prosecutor. They all went silent in the same 6-month window. I met his eyes. I think they're eliminating anyone who gets too close. Luca went very still. How close were you to publishing? A week, maybe less. I had sources ready, documentation, testimony. I swallowed. Then my source went dark. Then I got the tip about the warehouse. Jesus. He stood, paced to the window. You were bait. They were using you to find my operation, frame me, start a war. Or both. He turned, and the look on his face was fury and fear. You walked into that warehouse thinking you were investigating me. They were leading you to me, making you the match that lit the fire. But it didn't work. Because I took you first. He crossed back to me, grabbed my shoulders. Not rough. Urgent. Hannah, if I hadn't, if you'd published and named me, you'd be dead. I'd be fighting a war on 2 fronts. And they'd have exactly what they wanted. I looked up at him. At the intensity in his dark eyes. At the bandage on his arm that I'd put there. So what now? I whispered. Now you tell me everything. Every source. Every connection. Every piece of evidence. His hand slid from my shoulders to cup my face. And then we finish what you started. Together. Why would you help me? Because they tried to use you against me. Because they hurt people I'm supposed to protect. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Because you matter. And I'm done pretending you don't. The kiss happened without decision. His mouth on mine. My hands fisting in his shirt. The firelight and the snow and the danger all fading. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, neither of us moved away. This changes everything, I said. I know. We can't take it back. I don't want to. I kissed him again. Deeper this time, certain. And felt the last walls between us crumble. 3 days later, the storm broke. Power returned. Life resumed its careful rhythm, but everything had shifted. We'd crossed the line. There was no going back now, only forward, together, into whatever came next. 3 weeks since the warehouse. The timeline Luca had promised initially, but everything had changed. I sat in his study while he worked through intelligence reports. We'd fallen into this pattern over the past week. Him handling business, me cross-referencing my investigation files with information his network provided, working together in comfortable silence. My laptop screen showed a map covered in pins. Red for disappearances, blue for Ndrangheta operations, yellow for suspected trafficking routes. The pattern was undeniable now. Comprehensive. Damning. Look at this. I turned the screen toward him. 3 activists went missing within 2 weeks of filing FOIA requests about port inspections. A journalist disappeared 4 days after publishing an expose on labor trafficking. A prosecutor vanished the night before a grand jury hearing. Luca studied the screen, his expression darkening. They're not just moving people. They're eliminating threats systematically. And I was next on that list. You still are. He met my eyes. The difference is now they know I'm involved, that you're under my protection. Is that what I am? Under your protection? Among other things. The corner of his mouth quirked, but his eyes remained serious. Hannah, we need to talk about what happens next. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? I mean the original timeline is up. The territorial situation with the Ndrangheta has escalated, not resolved. And you, he stood, moved around the desk to lean against it in front of me. You're not my prisoner anymore. Haven't been for a while now. I'd known this conversation was coming, had felt it approaching like a storm. So, what am I? That's what we need to determine. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was tender, careful. I could arrange safe passage back to Chicago. Security. New identity if necessary. You'd be protected but free. But the Ndrangheta would still be looking for you. Still be operating. Still be disappearing people. His thumb traced along my jaw, and I would spend every moment wondering if my protection was enough. If you were safe. If they'd found a way past my safeguards. You're saying I'd be safer here. I'm saying, he paused, searching for words. I'm saying that I don't want you to go. That these past 3 weeks have become something I didn't anticipate. That the thought of you walking away feels wrong in ways I can't adequately explain. My heart hammered. Luca, but I won't keep you if you want to leave. He cupped my face in both hands. You need to choose, Hannah. Freely. Without coercion or fear. Stay because you want to. Leave because you need to. But choose. I looked up at him. At this man who'd kidnapped me and saved me. Who'd shown me layers of gray I'd never wanted to acknowledge. Who kissed me like I was oxygen and held me like I might break. What would staying mean? I asked quietly. It means we continue this. Us. Whatever we're building. His voice dropped lower. It means you help me bring down the Ndrangheta using your investigation and my resources. It means accepting that my world is dangerous and complicated and morally questionable. It means trusting me with your safety, your life. And if I go, then I let you, with every protection I can provide, with the knowledge that I'll still be watching, still be keeping you safe from a distance. He smiled slightly. I'm not sure I know how to stop. I stood, closing the distance between us. I should leave. Any rational person would leave. Probably. This is insane. 3 weeks ago you were my captor. Now you're asking me to partner with you. To stay willingly in a world I've spent my career trying to expose. I know. Everyone would tell me I'm making a mistake. That this is Stockholm Syndrome or trauma bonding or something equally psychological and unhealthy. They might be right. I reached up, traced the scar through his eyebrow. But they don't know what I know. They haven't seen what I've seen. They don't understand that sometimes the world isn't heroes and villains. Sometimes it's just people trying to survive in systems that are already broken. Hannah. I'm staying. The words came out certain. Clear. Not because I have to. Because I choose to. Because what we're building here matters. Because the story I'm chasing matters. Because you... I swallowed. Because you matter. Something shifted in his expression. Relief. Gratitude. something deeper I couldn't name. He kissed me then, slow and thorough, and full of promise. No regrets? He asked against my mouth. Ask me again when this is over. Deal. We worked through the afternoon, building a strategy. My investigative skills combined with his intelligence network created a picture more complete than either could have assembled alone. By evening, we had targets, names, locations. Adrian Greco, Luca said, pointing to a photo on his laptop. He's the one orchestrating the trafficking routes. Mid-level in the Ndrangheta hierarchy, but ambitious. Wants to expand territory, and doesn't care who gets hurt in the process. He's the one who's been escalating tensions with you. Yes. And the one who likely marked you as a target when you got too close to his operation. I studied the photo. Greco was maybe 40, well-dressed, ordinary-looking. The kind of man who'd disappear into a crowd, except for his eyes. Cold, calculating. How do we stop him? Carefully. Luca pulled up more files. He's protected, supported by the larger organization. Going after him directly would start a war we can't win. But exposing his operation, cutting off his roots, making him a liability to his own people, that we can do, using my investigation. Using your investigation combined with evidence I can provide. Things I've gathered over months of watching them encroach on my territory. And then what? I publish? We go to the authorities? Both. He looked at me directly. But it has to be airtight. One chance. If we miss, if they have warning, they'll scatter. Disappear. Rebuild elsewhere. And they'll come for you with everything they have. The weight of it settled over me. This wasn't just journalism anymore. This was war. Strategic and dangerous and potentially deadly. I'm scared, I admitted. Good. Fear keeps you careful. He pulled me close. But you're not alone in this. Not anymore. We spent the next 3 days in intensive preparation. I wrote, documented, built the narrative structure. Luca provided evidence, photographs, financial records, testimony from sources he'd cultivated. Together we created something powerful, undeniable. On the 4th day, his phone rang at dawn. I watched his expression change as he listened. Harden, darken. When? He asked. Silence. How many? More silence. Keep everyone inside, I'm coming. He ended the call, already moving toward the door. What happened? I stood, following. Greco made his move. Attacked one of our locations on the north side. 3 of my people are injured. 1 critical. His jaw was tight. He's declaring war. Then let's give him one. I grabbed my laptop. Everything we've built. It's ready. Let me publish now. While he's distracted. While he thinks he has the upper hand. Luca turned, studied me. Once you publish, there's no taking it back. You'll be a confirmed target. They'll know you're working with me. I know. They'll come for you. Let them try. I held his gaze. You said it yourself. One chance. This is it. He's exposed. Vulnerable. Acting on emotion instead of strategy. If we hit him now, we hit him hard enough that he can't recover. Slowly, he smiled. It was a dangerous expression. The smile of a man about to go to war. Then do it. Publish everything. I'll make sure it gets to the right authorities simultaneously. By the time Greco realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. I opened my laptop. My fingers flew across the keyboard. Subject line. Confirmed. Ndrangheta trafficking network operating in 4 states. I attached everything. Every document. Every photo. Every carefully constructed connection. I sent it to Jessica first, then to 3 national news outlets, then to the FBI field office, then to the state attorney's office. 14 emails, 14 bombs, sent simultaneously. It's done, I said. Luca looked at his phone as notifications started flooding in. His contacts, his network, all receiving the same information through different channels. It's done, he agreed. Outside, dawn broke over Lake Forest. Inside, we'd just declared war on an organization that made people disappear, that trafficked human beings, that killed anyone who got too close. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt certainty, purpose, like every choice in my life had led to this moment. Luca's phone rang again. He answered, listened, and smiled. Greco just got arrested. FBI raid on his location based on evidence received this morning. They found exactly what we said they'd find. And his operation? Raids across 4 states. Coordinated. Simultaneous. He looked at me with something like awe. You did it. We did it. Is it over? This phase is. He pulled me close. But the Ndrangheta doesn't forgive, doesn't forget. They'll regroup, rebuild, come at us differently. Then we'll be ready. Yes. He kissed the top of my head. We will. 3 weeks had become forever. A prisoner had become a partner. An enemy had become something else entirely. And standing in his study as sunlight streamed through windows, as sirens echoed in the distance where arrests were happening, as everything we'd built together began dismantling an empire of cruelty, I knew I'd made the right choice. Whatever came next, we'd face it together. The article went viral within hours. By afternoon, every major news outlet was running with it. Federal agents executed warrants across Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh. The Ndrangheta's trafficking network collapsed under the weight of evidence I'd spent months gathering, and Luca had strategically enhanced. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. I'd turned it off after the 50th call. CNN wants an interview, Jessica said through the laptop screen. We were on a video call, her face pixelated but excited. So does NBC, the Tribune, the Post. Hannah, this is massive, career-defining work. I can't do interviews right now. I glanced at Luca, who stood by the window of his study, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating security protocols. The situation is still developing. You're being modest. People deserve to know the journalist behind it. People deserve to know the victims, I corrected. The ones who disappeared. The ones who were trafficked. That's the story. Not me. Jessica studied me through the screen. You're different. Something's changed. Everything had changed. But I couldn't explain that the man I'd thought was a criminal had saved my life. That I'd fallen for him somewhere between captivity and partnership. That I was living in his house by choice now, not coercion. I'm just focused on the work, I said. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk publicly. But not yet. We ended the call. Luca finished his conversation and turned to me. Security is doubled. Triple-checked everyone on staff. No one enters or leaves without clearance. He moved to his desk, pulled up surveillance feeds on his laptop. Greco might be arrested, but his people are still operational. They'll be looking for revenge. How long until we know if they're coming? We already know they're coming. He met my eyes. The question is when and how. 5 weeks passed. 5 weeks of heightened security and careful routine. 5 weeks of me establishing myself as a legitimate journalist, working from a remote location. I published follow-up pieces on corruption in port authorities, on victims rescued during the raids, on systemic failures that had allowed trafficking to flourish unchecked, gave carefully controlled interviews via video, built my reputation on the story that had started with me walking into that warehouse. Luca and I fell into a rhythm. Mornings working separately, afternoons comparing notes, evenings that blurred from professional to personal without clear boundaries. We didn't define what we were. Didn't need to. It was enough to exist in this strange, liminal space between worlds. 2 weeks after Greco's arrest, federal prosecutors indicted him on 47 counts. Trafficking, racketeering, murder. The evidence was overwhelming. My investigation combined with testimony Luca had quietly arranged through his network created an airtight case. They're offering him a deal, Luca said one morning, reading something on his phone. Cooperation in exchange for reduced sentence. Will he take it? If he's smart. He set the phone down. But pride makes people stupid, and Greco has always had too much pride. 3 days later, we got our answer. Greco refused the deal, demanded trial, proclaimed his innocence loudly to anyone who would listen. He's gambling, I said, reading the news coverage, hoping the organization will protect him. Get him lawyers. Apply pressure. They won't. Luca's voice was certain. He became a liability the moment he got arrested. The Ndrangheta doesn't protect liabilities. They eliminate them. You think they'll kill him? Eventually. But first they'll focus on the source of their exposure. They'll focus on us. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt strangely calm, prepared. We'd been planning for this since the moment I hit send on that first email. The attempt came on a Tuesday morning in early December. I was in the library, researching a follow-up piece about corruption in port authorities, when the alarms went off. Not the house alarm. Something different. Deeper. More urgent. Luca appeared in the doorway within seconds. Basement, now. What's happening? 3 vehicles approaching. Unknown. Moving fast. He had a gun in his hand. I'd seen him armed before, but never with that particular expression. Focused. Ready. Hannah. Basement. Don't argue. I didn't argue. Ran for the stairs he indicated. He followed. Entered a code on a keypad I'd never noticed. A door opened to reveal stairs leading down. The basement wasn't a basement. It was a safe room. Reinforced walls. Monitors showing every angle of the property. Weapons locked in a cabinet. Enough supplies to wait out a siege. Stay here. He moved to the monitors, studying the feeds. Security team is engaging. 3 vehicles, approximately 9 hostiles. They're not subtle. Professional? Professional enough. He touched his earpiece, spoke rapidly in Italian. On the monitors, I could see SUVs blocking the drive. Men in tactical gear moving with purpose toward the house. Gunfire crackled through the speakers. Luca's security team engaging from defensive positions. The hostiles returned fire, advancing despite resistance. They're committed, Luca said quietly. This isn't a warning. It's an assault. What do? We wait. My people are trained for this. The house is fortified. Unless they brought explosives, they're not getting in. As if in response, one of the monitors flared white. Explosion. The front entrance. Or they brought explosives, Luca said. His hand moved to the weapon cabinet, opened it. Handed me a gun. Do you know how to use this? Point and shoot? Safety here. Aim center mass. Don't hesitate. He checked his own weapon with practiced efficiency. They're not coming down here. But if they do, if somehow they get past everything else, you shoot anyone who isn't me. Luca, promise me. I promise. He moved back to the monitors. On screen, hostiles breached the entrance. Smoke obscured the footage. His security team engaged, holding them in the entryway. But there were too many. Too determined. Luca spoke into his earpiece. Commands in Italian. On screen, 2 of his men fell back, regrouped. Created a defensive line between the hostiles and the interior of the house. 10 minutes of chaos. Gunfire. Shouting. The monitors showing violence I'd only ever seen in movies. Men fell on both sides. The hostiles pushed deeper into the house. Then sirens. Distant, but approaching. Police, I said. Better. Luca smiled slightly. Federal agents. I called them the moment the alarms went off. On screen, the hostiles heard the sirens too. Began retreating. Fell back toward their vehicles. His security team pressed the advantage, driving them out. By the time law enforcement arrived, the assault was over. 5 hostiles dead. 3 captured attempting to flee. 4 of Luca's security team injured. None fatally. We emerged from the basement to controlled chaos. Federal agents securing the scene. Paramedics treating wounded. Evidence teams photographing everything. Agent Morrison approached. Mr. Muratoni. Miss Brooks. Interesting morning. That's one word for it, I said. We'll need statements from both of you. He looked around the damaged entryway. Though I think we can piece together what happened. Retaliation for your exposé, Miss Brooks. Ndrangheta sending a message. They sent it, Luca said. My people received it, and returned it with interest. We gave statements, answered questions, watched as agents hauled away the 3 surviving hostiles. By evening, the scene was cleared. The house was silent again except for repair crews working on the damaged entrance. I stood in the library, looking at the windows, realizing how close we'd come. How easily it could have ended differently. Luca found me there. You're shaking, he said gently. Adrenaline wearing off. Come here. He pulled me close. I buried my face against his chest, finally allowing myself to feel the fear I'd been suppressing. They could have killed us, I whispered, but they didn't. We were ready. We survived. Is this my life now? Constant threat? Armed security? Panic rooms? He pulled back to look at me. I won't lie to you. This world, my world, comes with dangers. You knew that when you chose to stay. But Hannah, you exposed an entire trafficking network. You saved lives. That has consequences. Would have had consequences even without me. He was right. The moment I'd started investigating the 'Ndrangheta, I'd put myself in their crosshairs. Being with Luca had complicated things. But it hadn't created the danger. It had just changed how we faced it. I don't regret staying, I said. Even after this morning? Especially after this morning. I looked up at him. Because when everything went to hell, you protected me. Because your people fought for us. Because we're building something here that matters. He kissed me then. Soft and careful. Like I was something precious. 2 weeks later, the 3 captured hostiles made deals. Testified against the 'Ndrangheta leadership in exchange for reduced sentences. Their testimony, combined with my published investigation and the evidence seized in raids, dismantled the organization's Chicago operations entirely. Greco went to trial. Was convicted on all counts. Sentenced to life without parole. And slowly, carefully, the immediate danger receded. Not disappeared. Never disappeared in Luca's world, but reduced to manageable threat levels. I published more articles, established myself as an expert on organized crime and human trafficking, gave carefully vetted interviews, built a career on truth-telling and investigation. 3 months after the warehouse, I was still living in Lake Forest, still working alongside Luca, still choosing every day to stay in this complicated, dangerous, impossible life we were building together. And when he introduced me to the other family heads at a meeting he couldn't avoid, presenting me not as property, but as partner, as someone who'd helped protect territorial interests while exposing traffickers, I saw respect in their faces. Not all of them approved. Some saw me as a liability, a threat, an outsider who didn't understand their world. But Luca made his position clear. I was under his protection. I was his partner in both business and life. And anyone who threatened me answered to him. Standing in that room full of dangerous men, holding my ground, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't Hannah Brooks, freelance journalist who'd stumbled into the wrong warehouse. I was Hannah Brooks, investigative journalist who'd brought down a trafficking network, who'd partnered with Luca Moratoni, who'd chosen this life with open eyes. And I'd keep choosing it, every single day. 6 months after Greco's conviction, I thought we'd found equilibrium. A careful balance between the life I'd known and the one I'd chosen. I was wrong. The threat came from a direction we hadn't anticipated. Christopher Bellini was 29, ambitious, and reckless in ways Greco had never been. He'd risen through 'Ndrangheta ranks after the power vacuum my expose had created. Younger generation. Less interested in codes. More interested in proving himself through violence. He's declared vendetta, Luca said one morning in June, phone in hand. Personal. Against both of us. Greco's in prison because of his own choices. Bellini doesn't see it that way. To him, you're the journalist who destroyed a profitable enterprise. He set the phone down. He's making noise about honoring debts and protecting reputation. What does that mean practically? It means he's young and stupid enough to come after us despite knowing the consequences. We need to increase security. I should have been used to this by now. But 6 months of relative calm had lulled me into something resembling normalcy. That ended the day they burned my car. I'd driven into Chicago for a meeting with my editor. Rare trip outside Lake Forest. Lunch at a restaurant I'd been going to for years. 2 security personnel with me. When we came out, my Honda was engulfed in flames in the parking structure. No one was hurt. That was the point. This wasn't an attempt on my life. It was a message. We can reach you. Luca met me at the property, his expression darker than I'd ever seen it. This stops now, he said. You don't leave the property. Not until Bellini is handled. You can't just lock me up again. I'm not locking you up. I'm keeping you alive. He grabbed my shoulders, urgent. Hannah, they burned your car in broad daylight. That's bold. That's someone who doesn't care about exposure. Then we expose him like we exposed Greco. It's not that simple. Bellini hasn't been operating long enough to leave that kind of trail. He's paranoid, tech-savvy. Luca released me, paced to the window. We're working on it. But it takes time. How much time? I don't know. Days blurred into weeks. July heat settled over Chicago. I worked from the estate, published articles remotely, gave interviews via video, pretended everything was normal while security tripled. Luca grew more tense, more distant. I'd catch him staring at surveillance feeds at 3 a.m, waiting for the next threat. "Talk to me," I said one night, finding him in his study after midnight. "There's nothing to talk about. You're barely sleeping, barely eating. You're running yourself into the ground. Someone has to." He didn't look away from the screens. "Bellini's getting bolder. 2 more incidents this week. Let me help." "You are helping. By staying safe." "That's not helping. That's hiding." "Then hide." He finally looked at me, and I saw fear beneath the anger. Raw and honest. "Because I can't do this if I'm constantly worried about you being the next target." The argument that followed was our first real fight. Loud, heated, full of things we'd been avoiding. I accused him of being controlling, of reverting to the man who'd kidnapped me. He accused me of being reckless, of prioritizing pride over survival. We both said things we regretted. I slept in a different room that night, lay awake wondering if we'd just broken something that couldn't be fixed. Morning brought clarity and apology. Both of us, meeting in the kitchen at dawn. "I'm scared," Luca admitted. "More scared than I've been in years, because losing you isn't theoretical anymore." "I'm scared too," I said, "but I can't live in a cage, even one built with the best intentions. That's not living, that's surviving." "Then what do? We find middle ground. You protect me, but you don't suffocate me. We handle this together." I took his hand. Like everything else, he squeezed my hand. "I'm not good at middle ground." "I know. Learn." 2 days later, Jessica was taken. The call came at 9 a.m. Unknown number. Bellini's voice, young and arrogant. "You destroyed something valuable, Miss Brooks. Now I've taken something valuable from you." "Fair trade, yes." My blood went cold. "Who?" "Your editor. Jessica Carter. She's alive. For now." Luca was already tracing the call, fingers flying across his keyboard. "What do you want?" I asked. "You. Public retraction of your exposé. Admission that you fabricated evidence." Bellini laughed. "And then maybe I let her go." "Maybe. You know I can't do that. Then your friend dies. Slowly. Painfully." The call ended. I looked at Luca. "Tell me you got something." "Location. Approximate. West Side industrial area." He was already making calls. "He's using her as bait. Wants you to come running." "Then we don't run. We plan." I pulled up maps, cross-referenced with property records. Abandoned factories. Somewhere isolated. We worked through the morning, building strategy. By afternoon, we had 3 candidates. "We can't hit all 3 simultaneously," Luca said. "Then we make him tell us which one." I pulled out my phone. I call him back. Tell him I'm ready to cooperate. He'll take me to wherever he's holding Jessica. "Absolutely not. It's the only way. It's suicide. I won't be walking in alone." I met his eyes. "You'll be there. Your team will be there. And we'll have federal agents on standby. Morrison owes us." Luca stared at me for a long moment. This is exactly the kind of reckless plan I was afraid of. Good thing I learned from the best. I held up my phone. "Do we call him, or do we let Jessica die?" He swore. In Italian. Then nodded. I made the call. Bellini was predictable. Agreed to meet that evening. Gave me an address. West Side. Exactly where we'd guessed. "Come alone," he said. "Or she dies. I'll be there. 6 hours to prepare." Luca coordinated with Morrison. Federal agents would stage nearby. His security team would infiltrate the perimeter, create overlapping fields of fire. "You wear a vest," Luca said. Non-negotiable. The moment things go wrong, you hit the ground. Define things go wrong. Anything that involves bullets. He helped me into the Kevlar vest. "Hannah, promise me you'll be careful. Promise me you will too." At 7, I drove to the address, alone in a car equipped with tracking equipment. My heart hammered. The location was an abandoned factory, rust and broken windows. I parked where instructed, got out slowly, hands visible. Bellini appeared with 4 men, sharp suit, designer watch, playing dress-up as a crime boss. Miss Brooks, punctual. He gestured, and one of his men shoved Jessica forward. Alive, bruised, terrified. See? Unharmed. Mostly. Let her go, I said. I'm here. Not quite yet. Bellini circled me. First, you're going to call your news outlets. Tell them you fabricated evidence. That's a lie. That's survival. He pulled out a gun, pressed it to Jessica's temple. Call. Now. I pulled out my phone. Dialed. Waited for the signal that would tell Luca's team I was in position. Then everything happened at once. Federal agents burst through doors on 3 sides. Luca's security team opened fire from elevated positions. Bellini's men scattered, chaos erupting in heartbeats. I hit the ground, covering Jessica's body with mine. Gunfire cracked overhead, shouting in English and Italian. It lasted maybe 3 minutes. Felt like hours. When silence fell, Bellini was on the ground, wounded and captured. His men were dead or surrendering. Jessica was safe. Luca appeared beside me, pulled me up, checked me over with hands that shook. Never again, he said. We are never doing anything like this again. Agreed, I said. Then kissed him. Hard, grateful, alive. Bellini was arrested, charged with kidnapping, attempted murder, racketeering. He'd be joining Greco in prison, but the aftermath was complicated. Jessica knew now. Understood who Luca was, what I'd become. You're with him, she said the next day. Not a question. He's organized crime. It's more complicated than that. Is it? She studied me. Hannah, I've known you for 8 years. I've never seen you like this. So tell me honestly, is this what you want? I thought about the question. Yes, I said finally. It is. She nodded slowly. Then be careful. And keep writing. The world needs your voice. 1 year after walking into that warehouse. After being kidnapped and falling in love and choosing a life I never could have predicted, I stood on the terrace of the Lake Forest estate, watching sunset, and felt Luca's arms wrap around me from behind. Regrets? He asked softly. I leaned back against him, felt his heartbeat. Thought about everything we'd survived, everything we'd built. Not a single one. Good. He kissed the top of my head. Because I'm done letting you go. Ever. Promise? Promise. The sky darkened. Stars emerged. And somewhere in Chicago, people lived and died and made choices that would define them. We'd made ours. Together. And we'd keep making them. Every dangerous, impossible, perfect day. 2 years after the warehouse. 2 years of building something impossible and making it work. I stood in the library of the Lake Forest estate, now as much my home as Luca's, and looked at the bound manuscript on the desk. My book. The full story of the Ndrangheta trafficking network. The investigation that had nearly killed me. And the complicated truth of organized crime in modern America. You're sure about this? Luca asked from the doorway. He held 2 cups of coffee, morning ritual we'd developed. I'm sure. I took the coffee, savored the warmth. It's time. The story needs to be told properly. The whole thing. Start to finish. Including us? Especially us. I looked at him. Not the details. Not anything that compromises security. But the truth that the world isn't black and white. That sometimes the people we're taught to fear are more complicated than the narrative allows. He moved to the window, looking out at grounds covered in October color. The families won't like it. Some already think you're a liability. This will make it worse. Let them think what they want. I joined him. You've protected me for 2 years. We've survived 2 attempts, multiple threats. I'm not backing down now. I know. He smiled slightly. I stopped expecting you to back down 18 months ago. That was a good plan. That was a terrifying plan that somehow worked. He turned to face me fully. Hannah, if you publish this, there's no going back. Your name will be permanently linked to mine, to this world. People will judge you, question your ethics. They already do. I reached up, touched the scar through his eyebrow. The moment I chose to stay, I made my choice. This book is just me being honest about it. He caught my hand, pressed a kiss to my palm, then publish it, tell the truth. The book released 6 months later, in April. The response was immediate and polarizing. Some praised it as groundbreaking investigative journalism that humanized complex criminal networks without excusing their actions. Others condemned it as propaganda from a compromised journalist. I did interviews, defended my work, explained that understanding wasn't condoning. Jessica stood by me. So did other journalists who recognized the integrity in it. But others wrote op-eds, questioning my credibility, my relationship with Luca Moratoni. "They're calling you my captive who developed Stockholm Syndrome," Luca said one evening, reading his phone. "Let them." I closed my laptop. "Anyone who actually reads the book will see that's not what happened. You're taking this better than I expected, because I know the truth. We know the truth." I moved to sit on the edge of his desk. "I walked into your life by accident. I stayed by choice. Everything after that was us figuring out how to build something real." He pulled me closer, hands settling on my hips. 2 years. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes like forever. "Both," I agreed. "It's both." His phone rang. He glanced at it, expression shifting. "It's Marco, from the council. Marco Rinaldi, head of one of the 5 families that formed the alliance Luca worked within. Older generation, traditional, not a fan of mine." "Answer it," I said. Luca did, putting it on speaker. "Marco." "Luca, we need to talk. About the journalist. About her book." "I'm aware of the book. I read it before publication. Then you know she's made us all targets. Exposed operations. Named names. She exposed the Ndrangheta, not us. There's a distinction. The authorities don't care about distinctions. This brings heat we don't need." Marco's voice was hard. "The council wants to meet. Discuss this situation. Discuss her." I felt Luca tense. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "We're suggesting that having a journalist in your home, writing about our business, is a problem that needs addressing. She's under my protection. That hasn't changed. Then perhaps your protection needs to be reconsidered." The threat was clear. Not against Luca directly. Against me. Against his position if he continued defending me. "Marco," Luca's voice dropped to something dangerous. "I've built relationships, expanded territories, and handled threats that benefited all of us for 5 years. I've earned my seat at your table. And I'm telling you now, clearly, that Hannah Brooks is not negotiable. She's mine to protect. And if the council has a problem with that, they can bring it to me directly." Silence. Then a sigh. "You're willing to risk everything for her?" "Yes." Another pause. "The council meets next week. Thursday. Chicago. You'll attend. Bring her." "Why?" "Because if she's going to be part of your life, part of our world by proxy, then we need to see what we're dealing with. Need to understand if she's an asset or a liability." Luca looked at me. I nodded. We'd known this was coming. "We'll be there," Luca said. The call ended. "You don't have to do this," Luca said immediately. "I can attend alone." "No." I slid off the desk, paced to the window. Running doesn't solve anything. They want to meet me? Fine. Let them see that I'm not some naive journalist. I know exactly what your world is. And I'm still here. They'll question you, challenge you, try to find weaknesses. Good. I turned back. Because I've faced federal agents, rival criminal organizations, and attempted murders. I can handle a meeting with some old men who don't like that their world is changing. He almost smiled. Some old men who could have us both killed. But they won't, because you've made yourself valuable. And because killing a journalist who just published a major book would bring exactly the attention they're trying to avoid. You've been paying attention. I've been living here for 2 years. I've learned how this works. Thursday came cold and clear. We drove into Chicago, security team in 2 additional vehicles. The meeting location was a restaurant in Little Italy, closed for the afternoon. 5 men waited inside. Marco Rinaldi, Anthony Caruso, Vincent DeLuca, Joseph Colombo, Samuel Morrison. They studied me as we entered, assessing. "Gentlemen," Luca said, "thank you for agreeing to meet." "We didn't agree," Marco said. "We demanded." He gestured to chairs. "Sit." We sat. I kept my expression neutral, professional, confident without arrogance. "Miss Brooks," Marco began, "your book has caused quite a stir. That was the intention. Journalism should provoke thought. Journalism should also know when to stay silent. I disagree. The Ndrangheta was trafficking people. That truth needed exposure. And in exposing them, you cast attention on all of us. I made people look at a specific organization engaged in specific crimes. I was careful to distinguish between groups." Vincent DeLuca leaned forward. "You live with Luca Moratoni. You're in a relationship with him. How are we supposed to believe you're objective?" "I never claimed objectivity. I claimed truth. And the truth is that organized crime is more complicated than most people understand. That doesn't make it right, but it does mean we need to look at it honestly." "Pretty words," Anthony Caruso said. "But you're still a journalist sleeping with a made man." "No." I met his eyes. "It's a choice. I know who Luca is, what he does. I chose to stay anyway, just like each of you made choices that put you in this room. We all navigate morally gray areas. The difference is I'm honest about it." Silence fell. The 5 men looked at each other. "You have courage," Samuel Morrison said finally. "Most civilians brought before this council are terrified. I'm not most civilians. And I'm not here to be judged. I'm here as a courtesy." I leaned forward slightly. "You don't control me. You don't dictate what I write. I will continue investigating, continue publishing. The only question is whether you're wise enough to see that as an asset rather than a threat." "An asset?" Marco's eyebrows rose. "Explain." "I have credibility in mainstream journalism. I have contacts in federal law enforcement. I have access to information flows most of you can't touch without raising suspicion." I kept my voice steady. "And I have a vested interest in protecting Luca, which means protecting this alliance's stability. I can be a valuable resource, or you can treat me as an enemy and lose that opportunity." More silence. Then Joseph Colombo laughed. "She's got balls." Marco studied me, then looked at Luca. "You're sure about her?" "Completely. And you understand that if she becomes a problem, you're responsible?" "I understand. And I accept that responsibility." Marco nodded slowly. "Then for now, she stays. Under your protection. Under your accountability. But Miss Brooks." He turned back to me. "Understand this. We've survived by being careful. By knowing when to trust and when to eliminate threats. Don't make us reconsider which category you fall into. I understand perfectly." I held his gaze. "And I think we understand each other. You need me more than you want to admit. And I need this alliance stable to keep Luca safe. So let's all be smart about this." Another moment of tension. Then Marco extended his hand. "Welcome to the family, Miss Brooks. In whatever complicated capacity that means." I shook his hand. Then each of the others, sealing something that felt both dangerous and necessary. We left an hour later. In the car, Luca finally relaxed. "That was insane," he said. "That was necessary." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "They needed to see I wouldn't break. You told the heads of 5 crime families that they needed you. They do. They just didn't realize it yet." He laughed. Actually laughed. "I love you. You know that?" The words hung in the air. We'd said them before, but saying them now, after facing down the council together, felt different. Final. Real. "I know," I said. "I love you too. 2 years after a warehouse, after being kidnapped and falling in love, after choosing a life that made no sense on paper, but worked perfectly in reality." We drove back to Lake Forest as evening fell, back to the estate that was home, back to the life we'd built in the spaces between light and shadow. And somewhere in Chicago, 5 men who ran criminal empires talked about the journalist who dared to walk into their world and claim a place in it. I'd made my choice. Luca had made his. And together, we'd keep making them. Every dangerous, impossible, perfect day.